I am Tressie Phelps. I'm an RN. I have my bachelor's degree. I have been a nurse in the hospital for 25 years, 10 of which in ICU, and I was a travel nurse for 7 years. And now I am an assistant nurse manager on a PCU. I am a night shift nurse, so I spend a lot more time with the patients and nurses and not nearly as much time with meetings because meetings are mostly in the day. So I do leadership rounds with all the patients on the floor at night. I try to get them done before 10 and just check in on them, see if they need anything, if they're having problems. And then I'm also supervising the nurses and staff to make sure medications are being done, procedures are being done, labs aren't being missed, and things like that.
Okay, about how many patients you probably check in on each shift?
We have a 40-bed unit. The day shift has meetings at 9 a.m. called multidisciplinary rounds, and it's meetings with doctors and case management and nurses to say, okay, what's keeping this patient here? What can we do to get them out of here? Do they still need to have this test that hasn't been done? Are they waiting on surgery? So night shift starts making that list and gives that to day shift. So whenever they go into their meeting at 9 a.m., they want to discuss all 40 patients in about 30 minutes.
Wow. That's an interesting part of this stuff, is the things you don't think about, the things you don't see behind the scenes. I've never thought of, they sit down and go through everybody on the floor and kind of strategize all the different status of each person. When I think of a nurse, I just think of somebody that knows medicine, knows how to help take care of patients, checking IVs, giving shots. Sounds like there's even more than that goes on. I wouldn't think about, unless I guess was getting into it or talking to somebody like you.
I think the better you become as a nurse, the better you are at picking up on all these cues. Just walking into a room and you're constantly looking for what's wrong. What can I fix? Is the IV okay, or is it getting red and swollen? Is the Foley draining urine okay? Does the patient color look okay? What's going on mentally, physically, emotionally that is off that you can fix?
What's the favorite part of your job?
One of the favorite parts of my jobs is actually getting a chance to actually sit down and talk with patients and families and working out solutions for them. We spend a lot of time education, how to take medicine, how to do dressing changes. You're the nurse at home.
Is there a dislike?
Mostly in the last couple of years, the biggest dislike is the lack of respect people have for people. It's a lot of, okay, you came to the hospital for help, but you're not agreeing to do anything we've asked you to do. We've asked you not to go outside and smoke, you're going outside to smoke. We've asked you to let us draw these labs, you won't let us draw these labs. We've asked you to go to dialysis, and you won't go to dialysis. It's a very frustrating part of the job.
It almost brings a new dimension of psychology into how do you help take care of these people. In addition to physical health, now you're trying to mentally figure out how to deal with the person too. Now that you kind of describe what you do every day, going back a little bit, when did you figure out this is what you wanted, and then how did you kind of just start progressing through your career?
I've always been a caretaker. I grew up on a farm caring for animals and stuff, and my grandmother lived with us when I was in elementary school and died with cancer. And that progressed to, I knew going to college I wanted a job that would be pretty secure in having a job and that I could pay my bills and support myself. And I liked nursing and caring, and the fact that there was such a wide variety of things you could do with nursing and still be a nurse. First, I was in the hospital for about 5 years, and then I traveled for 7 because we were having daycare disasters with our 2-year-old. And so back in 2002, my husband became Mr. Mom, and we all traveled together. So my husband and little girl and 2 dogs and I hit the road, and we would go places for 3 to 6 months at a time and just explored the country.
Would you recommend, if somebody's looking into that, that's a good, viable, fun way to do nursing for a period of time maybe?
First of all, you need experience as a nurse, because when you travel, you will float to other units first, and when you get to a new hospital, you get like 1-day orientation in the classroom, signing off on policies and procedures and getting access to computers and medication machines. And then you get 1 day on the floor following a nurse to find out where things are. And then you're on your own and expected to operate fully functional. And I also made it easier for us that my husband was with me. I've seen a lot of marriages dissolve where one person and the spouse was traveling and the other was at home. And they just stayed apart for so long that they eventually just drifted apart, and the marriage did too. So that's one of the reasons I'm glad that when we did it together. And most of the time as a traveler, you don't get any benefits. But if you manage your money and save and invest, you can cover yourself on benefits and still have money for time off and things like that.
So after you did the traveling, what was the next phase?
Then I went to ICU, and I spent 10 years there. Again, still night shift. Lots of care in the cardiac care unit. It was a trauma ICU, so we had car wrecks where you'd have busted up arms, legs, head over here, and a congestive heart failure patient over here, and a really bad GI patient over here, and a heart attack over here. And it was just all kinds of skills at all times, and it was lots of teamwork, and it was really awesome because the doctors worked 24 hours a day with us. And we had some really great conversations at 2 a.m. because the doctors would sit down and talk to us, and we'd throw questions at them, and they would answer, have our little educational discussions in a roundabout way. And it was really great learning experience.
And from there, from that ICU, is that you went into what you're doing now?
No, then my husband got transferred to Orlando, Florida. So we picked up from Mississippi and moved to Florida. And I went to an ICU here in Orlando. And the hospital I'm at has 5 ICUs, which is the most ICUs I'd ever seen in one hospital. I was like, I've only seen 2, maybe 3, never 5. What in the world's going on here? But this hospital does a lot of transplants and everything. And this is just on the adult side, not the children's side too. So I worked the ICU for about 4 years and then decided, okay, I'm kind of tired of beating the angels off with a stick. Because all of our patients were critical all the time.
Is that a common term?
And no, it's one that I kind of felt like described the situation. One of my doctors used it one time whenever he was talking to a family member. And he's like, yeah, we have mama on the vent and 5 pressure medicines to keep her blood pressure up and a dialysis machine. I'm doing everything. I am beating the angels off with a stick. They are knocking on the door. that's how he got them to see she was at the end of her fight. I changed from ICU to palliative care. And so I say I went from beating the angels off with a stick to helping people accept the angels. Some people are like, whoa, I can't do that. I can't deal with people death and dying, and that's too emotional. In ICU, you deal with death and dying all the time. But to me, helping people have a good death is so much better than having a traumatic death.
I'm very sure that people appreciate somebody with that mindset at their bedside, knowing kind of what's probably coming. Glad people like you exist, to help in that moment. I'm sure it's never easy. Looking at this from the lens of somebody who's younger, they're kind of they don't even know if they want to get into nursing, or maybe they've already decided nursing, but they're not sure what to do next. Where would you point somebody like that? Blindly Google stuff? Are there schools or websites you know about already that you recommend, search terms? How does somebody kind of start getting more information?
You can definitely look at schools and hospitals. One of the best ways to really decide if you want to go into nursing is kind of take a job as a PCT or phlebotomy or health unit secretary in the hospital and actually see what nurses do. Even if you're a transporter in the hospital, it's going to give you some insight to what the nurses do and their schedules and some of the going on in the hospital and how it's different. Some places offer like shadowing, where you can go in and shadow a nurse for a day or two to see what it's like and all. And then with schools, if you have the money to do it, just go ahead and get your BS in and be done. The bachelor's with your RN. That way, if you want to advance later, you have it. You don't have to go back to school. Some people do LPN to RN, which is the ADN, and then they have to do RN to BSN and then go on to MSN and doctorate. So I'd rather just go ahead to BSN and be done. If you are thinking you want to do nurse practitioner or CRNA, you definitely want your bachelor's, because those require master's and doctorates. Once you are applying for your license, if you can get the compact license, definitely get the compact license, because that makes you available to work in other states without having to get new licenses, kind of like your driver's license. So with the compact, as long as you live in the state that you get your compact license in, you can go work in all the states that have the compact. And I think it's up to like 20 or 30 something states now. I have seen a lot of telehealth coming open where people are available for like nurse advice call lines. And if you have your compact license, you can work those and live in whatever state, it doesn't matter, and still work that job from home.
Sounds like two good things to have at a minimum if you're really looking to kind of go from there, but it sounds like you'd want those two things, the BSN and the compact.
And don't be afraid to try new things. There's so many different jobs in the hospital, in nursing, everything from forensic nursing to ICU, OB, pediatrics, oncology, rehab, and then you can go into clinics and infusions and cardiac. There's just a wealth of jobs, and some that you wouldn't even think of. You just have to be open and talk to people and explore some.
Just kind of looking through the list I had, kind of wind it up with anything lighthearted, funny stories come to mind that you'd like to retell. I'm sure you have tons of them as many years as you've been in there.
There's always something. In the light of HIPAA and stuff, I'll keep it to a minimum, but I'll just tell you this one. We had a little gentleman that lived on our unit basically for 11 months. He was waiting for court-appointed guardian because he had no family and he was deemed incompetent by psych to be able to make his own medical decisions. So we couldn't place him in like a nursing home without approval from somebody. So that would be a court-appointed guardian. So he lived with us for 11 months. So needless to say, we brought him in clothes and stuff, and every holiday, when we had a potluck, he got a potluck plate, and we decorated his room for birthday, Christmas, all that kind of stuff. One evening, he saw us all busy, so he strolled off the unit and downstairs, and it was around 10 or so. So security actually stopped him and asked him, "Hey, do you need any help?" And he's like, "No, my ride's out here." And he had on a long sleeve sweatshirt, so it covered his wristbands. So he proceeded to go outside, and he was gone. Our nurses got to chase him a block or two from the hospital and bring him back. This is not something you expect to do when you go to work. One of our nurses was looking out the window and saw him in the street light. And we figured out that mostly he wanted to go get a beer. He was used to doing that in the afternoons. So we talked to his doctor and we were like, "Look, dude, you got to let us bring him some beer every once in a while so that he'll like want to stay with us." And he started laughing at us. And we were like, "No, get back here. We're serious. We're advocating for our patient here." And he's like, "Okay, fine. He can have one beer every 3 days."
Thanks for taking time to do this.
Well, thank you for doing this. I think it's a great idea to help new and upcoming people.
Yeah, and it's genuinely interesting to get to talk to people, and the things, I'm really interested in more of kind of talk to people and hear what people have to say